Welcome to the Lifestyle Architects Show,
featuring interviews with inspiring and successful lifestyle entrepreneurs and helping you to design your life, build your online business, and live your dream now.
There is no better time than the present to make a change that will bring you true happiness and make your dreams a reality.
Changing his life and helping you change yours.
It's your host, Navid Moazzez.
Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Lifestyle Architects. This is actually episode 28, and I'm very excited to have Greg Hickman on the show to talk more about his leaving corporate story and how he built his audience and a profitable personal brand online, but most importantly, how you can do the same for yourself. So Greg is a mobile marketing consultant, blogger, podcaster, speaker, coach, and advisor, and the list goes on and on. So I would like to welcome you to the show, Greg.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. It's been too long. We've been trying to do
Yeah,
this
I know. And I mean, you launched your podcast, Leaving Corporate, around the same time I launched my show, The Lifestyle Architects. So I've been seeing you in the new noteworthy section. So definitely we can dive right into kind of talk more about your story and how you got started. You recently left your corporate job, and now you're focusing more on your personal brand. You have mobile mixed, and now you launched your personal site, greghickman.me. But start a little bit from the beginning and take us where you are today.
Yeah, so I got started off in like marketing world straight out of college, and was working for big brands like Pepsi and Unilever and all of that. And through kind of my boss at that company, she left. I started working at this very small 7-person promotional marketing company, which is where I got into the mobile stuff, which was in 2005. So this was 2 years before the iPhone came out, and it was something I just really fell in love with. And once the iPhone came out, I was like, oh my god, like this is a game changer. Like I really need to focus on this. So I stuck in the mobile space for a while. To keep the story semi-short, I started a text message marketing company with an old colleague of mine. That didn't work really well at all. We had no focus on particular clients. We were trying to sell software to small to medium-sized businesses, which is a very complicated challenge even to this day. And we were trying to do it on the side at the same time. So it took really a lot of effort to grow it. I stuck in that business probably too long, and kind of started telling myself, whatever I do next, I need to be doing it on my own. Like I don't need to have partners. I don't want to have partners. I need to be able to make decisions and move quickly. So we kind of got rid of that company and basically shut it down. And that was when I said, you know what? Going around speaking to all of these small business owners, they have no idea like even how to use mobile. So like going out there trying to sell them on this thing is going to be really hard when there's still this lack of education. So I'm like, how can I educate? And at the time I had been following David Siteman Garland from the riseofthetop.com, like you had mentioned earlier before we started recording. And he did that course, Create Awesome Interviews. And I was like, oh, maybe I can interview people. I'll learn in the meantime. So I started it really out of selfish reasons of I wanted to build relationships with people that I thought were doing really cool things in mobile. And I was like, maybe that'll lead to a consulting job. Maybe that'll lead to something. But I didn't know what that was. I'm just going to start. So I started interviewing people. I did the side-by-side videos. Did that for about 6 months before I went to New Media Expo. Got hooked on audio only, so I changed it to audio only. And since I made that change and came out of that conference, things kind of changed for me. I built relationships with influencers and really focused on how do I turn this audience now into customers. And that was my focus. So it was like everything I could learn. Like I knew mobile, but I didn't know how to grow my audience. I didn't know really much about blogging, building my email list or anything like that. And I leveraged the Mobile Mixed podcast as a way to get speaking arrangements, both on other people's podcasts and then at events like Social Media Marketing World, New Media Expo, and so on and so forth. And that's brought clients. So since then, it's funny, like you mentioned leaving corporate. I did all this while on the side. I had a full-time job and, working 5 p.m. to like 9 a.m. in the morning on this stuff. And a lot of people started following me, not for mobile, but for my story and what I was doing to build my audience and my business. So that's when I was like, maybe I should be talking about what I'm doing with Mobile Mixed, but Mobile Mixed wasn't the right place to be doing it. So that's why I launched GregHickman.me, because not only did I want to kind of capture my own journey, but I wanted to share things that were bigger than just mobile. So that's where GregHickman.me came from. And, the question I always asked was like, how did they make that transition out of leaving their job? And like, how are they making money and all that stuff? That was like a mystery to me. And I didn't really hear that question being answered in podcasts. So that's where leaving corporate came from. I wanted to find out, how much money were you making when you left? How much money did you have in savings when you left? Did that affect your relationships? What sacrifices did you make? Because I know I went through a lot of those challenges and questions in trying to leave my job, which I left in December of 2013. So now I'm on the mission of sort of 2 podcasts, but Mobile Mixed is really, there's a business behind Mobile Mixed and there's an audience there. And I'm going to continue to grow that, but I'm going to use that as a vehicle or even guinea pig, so to speak, to talk about how I got Mobile Mixed to where it is and how I use that to leave my job. And that's going to be discussed on GregHickman.me.
Very interesting as well that you started actually out of selfish reasons to interview people and learn from them. And that's kind of what I did as well with my, not only this show, but even before that, when I launched my site back in June last year in 2013, I just started interviewing people because I wanted to learn more about, as you said, how to build an audience, blogging, list building, all these things. That's very important. But something you did extremely well, that you kind of positioned yourself as an expert in the mobile marketing space because you had kind of the expertise there. And then you took that to leverage for your other projects. So if someone wants to kind of position themselves as an expert and they don't know like where to start, what's some steps they can take to get there?
Yeah. So, I mean, first you have to ask yourself, I think, like, what are you doing right now? Like, if you have a full-time job, like, do you not like it because, like, why don't you like the full-time job? Do you not like it because of the politics, the structure? Like, do you like the skill set that you have that you're using? Like, I really liked mobile marketing. Like, I didn't just start Mobile Mixed because it was something that nobody was talking about. It was something that I actually was passionate about and I wanted to learn more about. And that's why I knew that I would be able to keep creating content because I'm that interested in it. And, I've had over 100 episodes now of the Mobile Mix podcast, and like, it hasn't gotten old. It hasn't gotten boring. Like, I still enjoy doing it. And so I would ask whoever's listening, like, what skill set do you have? What do you enjoy doing that maybe you're already doing right now, but maybe you're just doing it for a full-time employer? And can you use those skills to start making money on the side? Because that's going to be the fastest way to start making money. And, the biggest challenge with someone trying to make this transition out is usually the uncertainty of, well, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay my mortgage? All this, how am I going to pay for anything if I don't have that paycheck coming in? So if you take the skills you have and then offer those up maybe as a consultant, or you start your own like agency or whatever, that's essentially what I did. I was doing consulting while I was building some training products online and writing ebooks. But like, the money that I was making, a lot of it came from consulting, which was, I was doing the same thing that I was doing for my full-time employer, just on the side for somebody else. So I would say identify that skill. And if you enjoy doing it, then go out there and start finding people that will pay you to do it in a limited capacity, on the side.
Yeah, I mean, you had some marketable skills there, so you could leverage that. And that's kind of, you talk about something on your podcast and your site, GregHickman.me. It's like corporate escape plan, which like you saved up some money before you actually got out of your job, so you had some savings. But maybe for someone who maybe they don't like their job, they don't have the skill sets to maybe launch a business, they have to learn something. Especially for me, I was in law school and I didn't really leverage those skills in my marketing efforts. I mean, I'm sure I learned some stuff, research and all this, but I had to learn everything from scratch. So for me, I started reading a lot of books, joining masterminds, and kind of surrounding myself with a lot of like-minded people. We have a lot of mutual friends as well in the online world. So can you talk a bit about this as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said earlier, like I knew that I knew mobile, but I didn't know what the heck I was doing when it came to like building a blog. Like I didn't know anything about WordPress, like how to start a podcast, like all the technical side of things. Like how do I use Aweber like to build an email list? Like I didn't know any of this stuff. So I mean, I was like, I knew what I was talking about. I didn't know how to get it out there and how to like really build that audience. So yeah, I mean, I went into like crazy consumption mode of I'm just going to consume everything that I can and digest it, read books, go to masterminds, get a business coach. I had a coach locally that I worked with. I was in an in-person mastermind with 8 people in Denver, Colorado. And then I reached out to influencers that really resonated with me. And my story kind of revolves, I'm sure many people's do, but mine revolves around Pat Flynn. And, I was like fascinated by what he was doing, not because of how much money he was making, but more because of his transparency, his style, and like the way he talks about his family. Like I saw that and I was like, that's what I want. Like when I have my business and it's fully matured, I want to be able to be like work when I want, to be able to spend as much time with my family or my fiance. I don't have any kids yet, but be able to do those sorts of things. And so I really resonated with how he conducted himself. So I followed him, and I would retweet his stuff. I'd comment on his blog posts. I'd send him an email here and there. And my podcast was on mobile at the time, so I was like, he doesn't really talk about mobile. Like, how can I get Pat on my show? And he mentioned this app company that he has, which he still doesn't talk about that much. And I was like, boom! Like he's somehow doing something in mobile. Like I'm gonna bring him on the show to talk about that. So that was episode 20 of Mobile Mixed, and I went out and talked to him. And at the time, that was video. So we had the face-to-face interaction like this, and after that interview, I stayed in touch with through email. Like I'd say, hey, I love this post that you wrote. Here's what I think about that, or like I try to add value in little ways, and then ask very short, specific questions, like one-line questions. I'm like, hey, having trouble with this, like, can you tell me how you did this? Or little things like setting up Libsyn, like what are your Libsyn settings? And he'd send back like a screenshot, and I'd be like, awesome, thank you. It wasn't like long novels of emails. It was like very short, super specific questions. And then finally I asked him, I said, I think his interview was in like April, and then in June, somewhere around like June or July of that same year, I sent him an email. I was like, hey, just hope all is well. I want to go to a conference, and there's so many of them out there. If you were me and you were just getting started and you really only had the money to attend one, which one would you go to? And he goes, come to New Media Expo. It's in January. It's in Vegas. I'm going to be there. Let's link up. We'll hang out. And he's like, that'll be a really good place for you to learn and then meet people. He's like, but focus on meeting people. And he goes, come a day early and stay a day late, because you want to go to all the parties, because that's where most of the networking happens. And I was like, sweet. So I got that email. I booked my ticket, got my ticket, I got my flight, and I went there literally with the main intention of meeting Pat. Like, people go to conferences and like they dish out business cards and all this stuff. Like, my measurement of success for that conference was, if I leave this conference and I don't have a better relationship with Pat, then this was a failure. That was the only thing I was measuring my success on. And if I got the most out of that conference. And I went there only to meet him, and I met him, and through focusing only on him, which I think is the important takeaway here, like pick one person and focus on building that relationship, because that one relationship will lead to so many more relationships. So what I mean by that is, I meet up with Pat in the hallway. I'm like, dude, what's going on? We start talking. Like, he recognized me because of the video interview. Gave each other like a bro hug. And then he was like, I'm having people in my suite tonight. We're going to be playing some cards. If you want to come over, come on over. And I was with Caleb Wojcik at the time too. Like, he was a big factor in all this too. So we were kind of like, going to every session together. And we went to Pat's room. And in Pat's room, I met John Lee Dumas, Amy Porterfield, Rick Mulready, Chris Ducker, Jason and Jeremy from Internet Business Mastery, Jamie Tardy. And I built all those, like, that was the start of all of those relationships. And, like, what's funny is I'm actually writing a blog post right now called Awesome by Association.
Oh, yeah.
Because we all heard of guilty by association, right? So, just by being in that room, I didn't know who most of these people were, but I'm like, oh, they must be someone really, really important because Pat invited them to be here, right? And then they're saying the exact same thing about me, like, oh, who's this guy? Like, I got to hear about this guy. And through that relationship, I met Jeremy and Jason from Internet Business Mastery, like I said, and then they asked me to come on their podcast to talk about mobile because they didn't know, they hadn't talked about it at all. So that was kind of where the guest interviews started happening. And then I was on Pat's show, and then Amy was like, come on my show. And then Mike Stelzner reached out to Pat and was like, hey, can you introduce me to Greg? And he introduced me to Mike. And then I was on Social Media Examiner, and it just kept going, and, riding that. But all of that, I don't think would have happened if I didn't focus on just going to meet Pat, right? If I was like trying to meet Amy, trying to meet Chris Ducker, I wouldn't have given Pat enough focus that would have put me in that room,
Yeah.
So that's my advice is pick one person, follow them, do whatever you can to create a relationship with them, and then take that relationship to an in-person relationship. So if they're speaking at a conference, go to that conference and support them, go in their session, clap, ask questions, and then do everything you can after that to keep building that relationship. And be genuine about it, but focus on one person.
This is extremely smart, and it sounds like you've been doing some things extremely well from the very beginning. And this blog post, Awesome by Association, or kind of building your brand by association, this is kind of what we did when you launched the show. That's what you did. You interviewed people, you reached out to people. You didn't have all the knowledge at the time. You knew about mobile, but then you kind of learned everything else from all these other people you met. And so would you say that was kind of the thing that took your business to the next level, that you focused on Pat, and now you have all those relationships, go on podcast, and that it kind of led you to build Mobile Mix to where it is today and your business? Yeah,
absolutely. It's definitely the relationships. I'd say probably the number one thing. It's to be able to have built relationships, strong relationships, friendships with a lot of these people that I mentioned. I was texting back and forth with Pat last night, like his renovating his new house, and he was like sending me photos, and I love that stuff. Like, he's like a very close friend of mine now, and I mastermind with John Lee Dumas and Rick Mulready, which has been probably one of the most impactful and helpful things in my business and life, period, just since I've started working with both of them on a weekly basis. To be able to just to shoot one of those people an email and be like, hey, I feel like crap today, this is why, what, any thoughts, any whatever, and to have them be able to come back and hold you accountable on the things that you had told them you were going to work on, really lights a fire underneath my behind, and makes me want to take action. So, that support net, not only just to be able to ask questions when you have no idea what to do, how do I do this? And someone's like, oh yeah, you just, go here or read this thing that I wrote, pointing you in the right direction from those sorts of people is really, really helpful for me. And then I took that to the next level by hiring a coach. So, I work with a coach on a weekly basis. I originally had one in person in my city in Denver we did one monthly session, and then there was a mastermind group that was with it. But a lot of the people in that mastermind group were in different industries, which was cool when I started. It was really a great experience. I was in there with real estate people, accountants, and you see a different perspective on a lot of things. But once I started really figuring out what was going on, with the online thing, I was I need to be in masterminds with more people that are on the internet, not accountants, not finance people or whatever. And I also need a coach that comes from that background that is maybe a little bit further along than where I want to be. So then I went out and got that sort of coach and created those sorts of masterminds. And between the relationships, the masterminds, and the coaching, like I would not be standing here talking to you.
Yeah, definitely. I want to get into this a little bit more in a minute here. But first, like a question I get a lot is actually if you're just starting out, how can I provide value to those like very successful and influential people online? And that's something a lot of people, they don't think they have anything to offer. I mean, they probably couldn't offer Pat Flynn advice on online marketing, but maybe they have something else to offer. So how did you go about that more specifically, and how would you advise someone else to do that?
Yeah, so a couple different things there. One, value doesn't need to be you teaching them something. Value can be appreciation, acknowledgement. Pat has a wall in his office of all of the thank you cards he's ever received. I can guarantee you the number of cards on his wall are way less than the number of emails he's received. So you could literally write Pat a card, like a physical card, and say, Pat, thank you so much. I've been really loving your content. You've been an inspiration to me. Here's how I took this piece of advice and implemented it in my life, and here's how my life is now better. Like, Pat will remember you for that. He won't remember you necessarily. I mean, he probably will, but less likely to get your email through the probably 600 that he gets every single day. But like that physical card, I mean, he hangs them on his wall. So like, I mean, write him a card. And kind of to that point, in that card, what I said was, implement something that they taught you, that person taught you. So if you were talking about Pat, like if you read a blog post that he talks about something, maybe affiliate marketing, and then you implemented it and it worked, share with him, maybe write a blog post and be like, I followed Pat's step-by-step tutorial and it generated me, my first $200. Like, and then explain how that worked for you. Like, guarantee you Pat will reshare that and talk about it, because that's a testament to how good his stuff is, right? And he wants to see you succeed. So take someone's, like the person you're following, take their advice, put it into action, and then share the results with that person. And they'll be likely to, one, remember you, and two, share your stuff, which will help build your audience. The route that I took was a little bit different. I'm actually starting to do more of what I just said now, now that I'm kind of talking more about things outside of just mobile. But what I did was I went to people that had audiences that talked a lot about marketing that hadn't mentioned mobile, and be like, look, like I have this experience. I've been doing this for, almost a decade. Like, let me either write a guest post, or maybe I can come on your show and we can talk about why your audience should be thinking about this and what they should be doing to get started. So like, that's how my conversation with Jeremy and Jason at Internet Business Mastery started. And, for them, it's easier to bring me on and to start talking about mobile than for them to go out and have to learn everything there is to know about mobile. Like, their audience will then say, look, like they're going out to get the experts to talk about certain things that they will, admit that they don't know everything about. So that is how I approached it. I said, hey, look, you have this audience, you haven't talked about this topic, yet a lot of the things that you focus on are going to be affected by mobile. Let's talk about that. So it was new content. It was a new material that hadn't been discussed. So that was the way that I was able to deliver value. So if you're doing something that's new, unique, that nobody is doing, that is, everyone's talked about Facebook advertising now, but like, I think I got lucky in the industry that I was in, like with being mobile. But if there's something that you see, like a blog, like a famous blogger talking about that your topic hasn't been covered, but it would apply to their audience, I would try to share that with them and see if they'd like to be sharing that with their own audience. So that's the value, another way to deliver value, which is the route I took.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely important. And that's what I've been doing a lot with, kind of when I started out with even blog commenting in the beginning and building a relationship, sharing their content. And maybe also I also did this what you just said with kind of implementing someone's advice, maybe from a blog post, and then telling them about it. Of course, they are very happy about it and they will remember it. And this actually works extremely well. So,
yeah, I ask a lot of questions too. Some people will say that's not the route to go. It's to just email people questions. But I think when you do it with short, specific questions and it's combined with the other things that we just talked about, the questions don't come off as annoying, especially if you're asking like short, sweet, simple, genuine questions. Like, I mean, I would email Pat a lot with like very short snippets of questions, you know? And like I literally was looking back at some emails because I'm going to probably put them in a blog post. Like I sent an email to Pat, like when I was getting ready to go to New Media Expo, and I was like, do people like dress up for this thing? Like, do I need to be wearing like can I wear jeans or like, and then he was like, this is how I'm going to be dressing. And then like, he just like, you know, like stupid, like people are like, really, Greg, like you're asking Pat about like what to wear. But like, and Pat sees that and like, he gets to meet me and he's like, he knows that like, that's like an actual genuine question for me. Like I'd ask that question to like, if I'm going out at night, I'm like, hey, like how dressed up are you guys getting? You know, like I just something that I've always done. So like that to me is just being me, which hopefully, I guess, comes through in my communication and delivery of it. So maybe that resonated with him. I don't know. But like I would ask those very short, specific questions just to get a response.
I think that's important. And also we get in a little bit more to some other tips. This is actually amazing for building your brand by association in the very beginning of your journey. And kind of what else can you do when you're starting out and want to build an audience and your personal brand online? If you were to start over now, what kind of would you do to build this up?
It's funny you asked that because I don't know if you follow Noah Kagan.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
AppSumo, and I was watching him do a speech not too long ago, and he made a comment that said, you know, ask yourself, what did you do to get to where you're at right now? And once you figure that out, ask yourself, are you still doing those things? And if not, why aren't you still doing those things? And start doing them again. And I thought about it, and all of the things that we just talked about, like engaging with influencers, building those relationships, getting on guest appearances on podcasts and guest blogs. Like I did a lot more of that when I first got started. And I was kind of literally like, I mean, full transparency, like the other day I was like, I sort of feel like I've hit a plateau. And I'm like, what do I need to do to like keep building this email list, like keep taking it to the next level? And I realized that I haven't guest blogged in 6 months at least. I haven't been going outbound to try to get into other audiences, like we're doing right now. But I think there's a lot of power in guest blog posts when it comes to building your email list. And for me, like right now, so my overall lesson is, I think, focus on one metric. And I learned this from Noah Kagan as well. Don't worry about every metric possible. Don't focus on podcast downloads, email subscribers, website traffic, visits, page views. Like, don't look at all of those. Like, pick one thing, and only every action you take, make sure that what that action will lead to the result that you're measuring. So for me, my main goal right now, the measurement that I'm using for my success is email subscribers per day. I want to increase my email subscribers per day. I have a number written on the wall in a circle, and it's not in a circle, it's underlined. And I look at that number every day, and when I'm writing a blog post, when I'm doing anything, I'm thinking about what can I do to get closer to that daily number of emails. I don't really look at my podcast download numbers, but that's not super important to me right now. I know that I want to build my email list. And we were talking about podcast downloads earlier, which we can go into, but like, I think if you're getting started, focus on your email. Focus on building your own audience, because you can have a podcast, you can have Facebook followers, but like you don't own your Facebook subscribers, like you own your email list. And you own your podcast, you sort of own your podcast download numbers, but unless they're on your email list, like getting in contact with them is really, really hard. So, what I've found as a predominantly I'm more of a podcaster than a blogger. I'm trying to like add more blogging to my mix. But as a podcaster, like only having like show notes on your site really doesn't give a lot of reason for people to come to your site. And if they're not coming to your site, it's tough for you to get them on your email list. So you could be getting 100,000 podcast downloads a month and 0 website traffic, which most likely means you probably don't have a big email list. So like you have to rely on saying, hey, everybody on my podcast, like I have this product, and hope that they listen and then go from wherever they're listening to purchasing. Whereas if I send you an email, I know you're in a place where you can either click a button and buy, or click another button to get to a page where you click and buy. So I think like focusing on the right metrics. So again, getting started, focus on growing your email list, and then only the number of people in your email list and how fast that list is growing.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, it's like Derek Halpern even says that if you're not building your email list, you're an idiot. And also very interesting that you mentioned Noah Kagan, because he even he's guest posting, but he's a millionaire. He has like several businesses, AppSumo and all this, and he was writing a guest post for, I believe it was Sean Ogle's site recently. And I mean, if he's doing it, then it's good for everyone else, I think.
So it's a great point. So what I just did recently, and I have to give credit to Brian Harris. I don't know if you know Brian Harris on this one. Brian Harris is a student of Noah's through AppSumo's monthly 1K course. And Brian's had a bunch of success, and like he has a blog called videofruit.com, and I interviewed him for Leaving Corporate yesterday, and he's awesome. And he wrote this post about focusing, like don't listen to what people say, watch what they do, and then mimic what they do. And he pointed out Noah Kagan, Hiten Shah from Kissmetrics, and Neil Patel from neilpatel.com. And he's like, look at what they're doing and replicate what they're doing. So like your point of Noah's still guest blogging. Like if Noah's guest blogging, like bet your ass you probably should be guest blogging too. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is like, I don't know if this is what Noah's metric still is, but I heard him say this a few times. Their metric was number of people taking their monthly 1K course. So they had like a number on the wall that was how many people bought the course, like how many people are in that membership community. And he probably looks at Sean Ogle's site, which is also an amazing site. Sean is an awesome dude. He says, look, Sean has a community of people that have probably been trying to build this location-based business and having trouble. The AppSumo program will help them make a business that has $1,000 a month, and I'm going to go guest blog, deliver tons of value, because that's going to make that audience aware of me and monthly 1K. Because he's definitely, guarantee you, if you read that post, I haven't read it, but you'll probably see some reference to building a business.
Most likely, yeah.
And it goes to that course. So, it's just, that's how you grow your audience. And like, that's why I said I'm kind of going back to this practice of like, I've been picking a handful of sites that I want to be a guest blogger on, and I'm putting together subject lines and things like that to say, hey, could I blog on your site on this topic? And like, because when I was featured on Copy Blogger, that brought in a ton of new email subscribers. When I was featured on Pat's site, that brought in email subscribers. When I wrote for Social Media Examiner, that brought in email subscribers. So like all of those things are really what helped propel and grow my list. But I haven't really been doing them as much. So getting back to that is what I'm going to be focused on.
Yeah, I mean, but as we've been talking about a lot, it all starts with the relationships. Otherwise, you cannot really approach a site like, Pat Flynn or Copy Blogger. You need to start with the relationships in mind and build it up. You can always start with smaller sites, but You have to, if you are spending like, I don't know, sometimes it takes like 20 plus hours to really write an epic guest blog post, and then you really want it to yield some results, right? So yeah. So if you move on here a little bit, that you started in mobile, but it's a narrow niche. That's also a mistake I see a lot of people make, and I probably did this myself when I started out, just sharing my entrepreneurial journey, but then I narrowed down more to kind of personal branding and so on. So can you talk a bit about the importance of kind of narrowing down your niche and becoming known for something like you did with mobile?
Yeah. So I think that's been very, very powerful for my growth. It's funny. I was in the Philippines speaking at Chris Ducker's Tropical Think Tank conference, and it was a very small event. Awesome conference. He's going to be hosting it again next year, so you should definitely check that out. Yeah. But there were 8 speakers, and when you look at the 8 speakers, they all had a focus on one very specific thing. Like Chris spoke. If you know Chris Ducker, you probably know he was talking about using virtual assistants and building a virtual team. That's a focus. Pat Flynn talked about affiliate. That's a focus. Amy Porterfield talked about Facebook ads. That's a focus. I talked about mobile. Natalie Sisson talked about crowdfunding because she did that to launch her book. John Lee Dumas talked about podcasting. Caleb Wojcik talked about video. And Gideon talked about video also. And actually, we all had 2 presentations, so we all got to talk about a couple different things. But like, if you look at all of the speakers, they all had and still have pretty much a unique focus. Like, even though I'm doing this leaving corporate, like, people are still like, Greg, the mobile guy. Mm-hmm. And not in a bad way. Like, that's something that I know that a lot of people aren't talking about. So I can leverage that. And for me, the great thing about mobile is that mobile touches everything. So like 70% of Facebook usage is on a mobile phone. So I can go talk about Facebook because Facebook is affected by mobile. I can go talk about email because most emails are read on a mobile phone. 61% of podcasts are downloaded on a mobile phone. So like, I like mobile because it's like a layer that touches everything. So like, when I start talking about things that are outside of like text message marketing or an app or mobile websites, like, it's still relevant. So that's nice for me, but I'm still the mobile guy, right? I think having that focus is really important, especially in the beginning. Like you said, you can niche down too far. I don't think mobile is too far niche down. But like, if I was doing like just mobile for, mobile for restaurants, I mean, there's still a lot of restaurants that might actually still be a good niche. Like, but yeah, maybe it's like mobile for a specific type of restaurant. Exactly. might be one niche too far, So, but that's only going to come from you experimenting, right? And you trying to figure that out. But like, if you're just like marketing,
yeah, I mean, I have some clients coming in, and I had this one specific client. They said, I'm passionate about marketing. I was like, yeah, but there's a lot of people they're passionate about marketing. We have to niche down. We have to find out where you can add value. And that's kind of, if I said I'm just focusing on branding, branding is huge, it's big, it's better to maybe niche down to maybe creative entrepreneurs or, this niche, that's more powerful. And then you can add value to them in a better way with your products and services that you offer.
Yeah. And I'll give you kind of a use case, not a use case, but like a kind of a story of mine that was a big obstacle in my growth. So when I started, I was interviewing big brands and people that were doing mobile things for big brands. And I wanted to break that information down to the small business owner. But what happened was, because the podcast was a side thing for me at the time, I was literally just chasing interview after interview after interview that I spent almost zero time on breaking it down for the small business owner. So even though that was my intention, I wasn't executing on that. And through that, I ended up building an audience of people that were in big agencies and wanted to work for agencies that probably would never, ever become a customer of mine unless I went and offered that product, which I'm actually going to be working on at some point. But like, my focus is small business. So I had to like literally put a stake in the ground and say, I am mobile for small business, and really focus on making sure that my content was for that person. because like the way a small business approaches mobile is going to be way different than the way a big brand approaches mobile. Yeah, they'll probably do some of the same things, but probably in different capacities, mainly due to budget and resources. So like I can't really talk about both of them in one post without being like all over the place, which then makes it really confusing for people, which is what I was doing. And I think that was what stunted my growth in the beginning, because someone would come to my site and they probably were sitting there saying like, I don't even know if he's talking to me. You know, like this, like, is this for me? I don't even know. And until I really took that focus, that's when things like really, again, started to pick up. So I think it really is important, whether you say like branding for creative entrepreneurs, you might want to ask what creative entrepreneurs means. Like, and at least have a definition of that in your own head. Yeah. Maybe it doesn't need to be, maybe creative entrepreneurs to you is like graphic designers and copywriters, or creative entrepreneurs. Like one of my friends, Amber Ludwig, she helps authors, speakers, and coaches launch their business online. So, typically authors, speakers, and coaches, a lot of them that are like an older generation got started not online. So she helps them take their existing business and bring it online. So but she only focuses on those people. So like, that's a niche, so she knows if she meets someone and they're like, hey, I'm a dentist, like, yeah, she could probably help them. But if she looks at kind of her goals and her experience, she could then say, that's out of my wheelhouse. I only work with authors, speakers, and coaches, which is important because, again, when you don't have that focus, you'll probably say yes to a lot of things that you shouldn't be saying yes to. I used to accept meetings that I don't know why I even said yes to them, to be honest. Like I get on these phone calls with people. Like, for example, there's an email in my inbox right now of someone that said, hey, I'd love to hop on the phone for 30 minutes because I'd love to collaborate with you. And I wrote back and I said, can you tell me what you see as our collaboration via email? I don't have any time to hop on a 30-minute phone call. And they wrote back and they explained it. And based on the email, I have no interest in collaborating with them. So I don't have to now sit on a phone call 15 to 30 minutes, which will probably end up being 45 minutes to find that same thing out. So it's like, I'm being very more protective of my time. And as entrepreneurs that are especially working on things on the side, you need to be as well. So like you need to work on the right things. So having that niche and that focus of I only work with authors, speakers, and coaches will help you say no to all of the other people that aren't those three things that will allow you to be more productive.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it sounds like when you did that, you kind of had also defined your avatar, which is also very important. So you had maybe a person in mind. Can you talk a bit about that as well?
Yeah, create an avatar.
Yeah.
An avatar, I'm sure you guys have talked about on the show, is just essentially a fictitious character that is your ideal customer, and very specific about what that person is. Like, so for Mobile Mixed, my avatar's name is Jason, who actually is an actual customer of mine. His name is Jason. He's 39 years old. He has 2 kids. He has a full-time job, but he also has been selling marketing services to small businesses and trying to launch his own mobile marketing business. So he's trying to add an additional $1,000 to $2,000 a month in revenue by using this mobile marketing service and offering it to his local restaurant, his local dentist or salon. So like that's very specific. Like if a woman who's 22 comes and talks to me, I mean, maybe she's trying to do the exact same things. I can then assess if she's actually the right customer. But if I look at my audience as a whole, it skews a little bit male. It's probably like 55% male. But they're all late 30s. They all have kids, and they're all trying to use mobile marketing as a business opportunity in their local markets. So like that's very specific. So I know who I want to be talking to, and that's them. And that's why I when I did a survey that allowed me to find that out. I created the Mobile Marketing Business Academy, and I pre-sold it, and I had a handful of people join as charter members, which fit that exact avatar. And I only knew that because I did the survey where they told me who they were. And now that's who I'm focused on. Like now I know I need to go find more of Jason, you know? So having that avatar is really, really important because it'll give you that focus. And like I said in the beginning, I didn't really define an avatar. So like I had agencies following me, I had brands following me and then I had, you know, restaurant owners following me, and I was all over the place. And until I really defined who that avatar was, I didn't really I couldn't really engage with people, you know, like people always look at your content and they say, I don't know if he's talking to me. And that'll be a problem. So once you know who that is, you can better talk to them.
Yeah, it's very smart. And I mean, we talked a bit in the beginning about kind of podcasting and like, I mean, you built your platform through blogging, podcasting, and now you're selling your products and services. So like, how can you stand out in this crowded marketplace? Like with podcasting, there's so many out there. So I mean, you grow your business through podcasting, interviewing other people. Do you still believe this is the best way to get started if you kind of are trying to get something off the ground now in 2014?
Great question. Is it the best way to get started? I don't know if I have the answer to that. Is it powerful? Yes. Is it competitive? Way more competitive now than it was before. I mean, like, I don't really have a specific answer. All I'll say is because I'm still trying to figure it out. So like this is,
I mean, that's why I brought it up as well, because we talked about this a bit as well.
Yeah. So like full transparency. I mean, like it's hard. Like, and you know, with all the relationships I have, the guests I've had, the guests you've had on your show, like it's going to be hard to get to say like John Lee Dumas number of downloads, right? Like that happens. Like I think people see, and this is very generic, this is my opinion, people can have different opinions. Like if people are getting into this thinking that they're going to have so many downloads a month that they're going to be making 20 to 50K a month in sponsorship, I think that's not really going to happen. Like that is only going to happen once in a while. Like John came in and killed it with a specific need. He was kind of like, he revolutionized, whether there were other daily podcasts before him, which there were, he like revolutionized daily podcasting. And he revolutionized it by interviewing entrepreneurs. Now, I mean, you look at your show, you look at my show, there's 100, I talk and I coach people that are starting interview-based shows with other entrepreneurs, right? And one of the things I'm constantly saying is like, at this stage in the game, I think podcasting is a great vehicle for you to create an audience. Yeah. Is it going to be the backbone of your business? Probably not. It might be your key marketing channel. I mean, because quite frankly, like John has what, like 500,000 downloads a month or something. If you or I or anyone listening, if you only have 1,000 downloads a month, picture standing in a room speaking to 1,000 people. That's a lot of people still. Like there are plenty of podcasts that are not ranked in the top 200. Mobile Mixed isn't ranked in the top 200 of business or anything, and it hasn't been since probably it was in New and Noteworthy when it launched almost 2 years ago. And that podcast has still brought me an audience that has allowed me to create an income that allowed me to leave my job and create a foundation for which I could get clients and build a business, right? So like, I think people, from my view, are going into this thinking that it's like a slam dunk and that their business is going to be sponsorship, right? Which I think that I don't want to say that ship has sailed. I think it's a lot harder to get on that ship. Yeah. And to get on that ship, I can guarantee you it's probably not going to be interviewing entrepreneurs. Yeah. You know, like there needs to be a more unique spin. And I'm saying this not as like that I'm saying this as that we all need to think about it this way, but I'm speaking just as much to myself as well. Like leaving corporate, I interview entrepreneurs. Like there are people, like I told you, that probably see that I have an interview with Amy Porterfield or John Lee Dumas, and they won't listen just because they've heard John or Amy on 100 interviews already. Even if I'm asking them questions that they both agree that they've never been asked, just from the view of what it looks like someone might rule me out. So what can I do to take it to the next level? And kind of what I've been kind of saying this in my mastermind groups. I think we, as entrepreneurs right now that are in podcasting, we are in the very early stages of a transition or a shift in how things are going to be done moving forward, and what is going to be successful. Because I don't want to say that there's more competition, and not because like there's more people interviewing entrepreneurs. There's just more. So like there's more podcasts. Like the day that Leaving Corporate launched, like you launched within a few days of that. Tim Ferriss's podcast launched. James Altucher's podcast launched. Jeff Going's podcast launched. Billy Murphy's podcast launched. Yeah. All of which are amazing. Like I listen to all of those podcasts, right? And there's only so many slots in new and noteworthy, right? So, I mean, like there's just more people doing it and more people producing good content that like, I'm not just competing with you. I'm competing with you choosing to listen to a podcast or read a blog post, or you spending 5 extra minutes on Facebook or listening to my podcast, you know? So like we're just competing with a lot more than other podcasters. And which is why, like, if people are out there thinking that they're going to hang their hat on the podcast, I think that that's going to be a mistake. Because it's just one little aspect of creating that audience that you can work with. So if you're out there getting ready to start a podcast, one, I would say if you're interviewing entrepreneurs, it's going to be an uphill battle, I think, unless it's on a topic that hasn't been talked about yet. But if it's about like entrepreneurs and how they grew their business, what made them successful, it's going to be really, really hard. So I just think as podcasters, we need to start thinking about how do we differentiate? Does it have to be an interview? No. Can it be a mix? Yeah. What does that mix look like? Are they long episodes? Are they short episodes? Am I reading quotes? Am I reading blog posts? Is it an audio blog? Like there's just so much more that podcasting is going to become that I think we need to start thinking about what that's going to be, because that's going to make us stand out. Yeah,
very good point. And I completely agree that I see a lot of podcasters make this mistake that they are trying to maybe become the next John Lee Dumas or trying to copy what he does or whatever. You know, I think that's a big mistake in trying to see maybe the podcast as the foundation of a business, because that's just part of it. There's a marketing channel, just like a blog. So one other thing here is that it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go into whatever it is that you are passionate about. You know, a competition is good. You know, it's not that. I mean, there's a lot of people doing this, a lot of social media courses, podcasting courses. A lot of people are making money, not just John Lee Dumas with Podcasters Paradise. I see a lot of podcasting courses coming up, and they are making good money on it. So you can go into this niche, but maybe not podcasting. The specific thing you're doing is not maybe going to bring in the most money for you. Yeah, and I mean, like, you know, kind of to that point of the podcast is a vehicle to which brings your audience onto your site to potentially become a customer. I mean, go look, John shares his income reports. If you look at all of his income reports, you will see that his sponsorship is pretty much the same every month. Like, for him to get more sponsorship dollars, he needs to either charge every single sponsor he has now more or bring on more sponsors. But if he brings on more sponsors, it kind of flatlines, because if he brings on more sponsors, it degrades the value of the show, because now there's 4 minutes or whatever, I forget how long he does of that, of just advertising, which might be too much. I mean, I know he thinks it's too much, or at least recently said it was too much. Like that's a challenge for him. So he knows that is not as scalable. And then if he charges more, are the advertisers still getting the return on their investment that they're getting now? So like there's a lot less wiggle room there. So like, again, look at his reports and you'll see very consistently his amount of revenue flatlines. Yes, it's over $30,000 a month, but anyone that's just getting started now is going to have a little bit more difficult of a time getting to that level of revenue and sponsorship. But again, even he sees that it's flatlining, and you'll see it too. That's why he has his own products, which he focuses way more on. Look at his income report for May, when May is over. He went traveling for 2 weeks, and he knows that this is going to be a great blog post. I can't wait for this blog post. It's going to be crazy,
Yeah, he had a webinar yesterday. He did really good yesterday on his webinar. But like, look at the difference in April's revenue and May's revenue when he is not promoting his own products.
Yeah.
It's going to be lower. A lot lower. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, how much he does, but it's only so scalable, sponsorship. So I just think it's like you can use it as a vehicle to drive sales of your own product and create that loyal following. And that's what you should be looking for, is that loyal following. And how can I bring this audience that listens to me to a transactional point where they're either subscribing to an email or they are buying a product.
Definitely, and that's something you've done now as well with the transparency. You kind of incorporate the lifestyle business review every month, and you're sharing exactly what's working, what's not working, and I see this more like Pat Flynn. I think he started it. Then John Lee Dumas came after, a few other people, but they're probably the ones most people follow. They have the highest numbers probably, and then you have it as well for your new brand. Can you talk about this? How the transparency helps you, and telling your story basically. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people resonate with me because I'm only a few steps ahead of them, which is really important. Because like some people will look at John or Pat and be like, the thought of making $100,000 to $200,000 a month seems so impossible that they're out of the gates. They just give up on themselves. Whereas like for me, it's like I'm still in fairly early stages that like it almost is like I'm within reach, which I am. I mean, to be honest, they are too. And it's, I think that transparency for me, I started doing it because one, I wanted to look at it myself. And I know that's why Pat started. It's like, hey, like one, I know I need to get better with finances. So like by me writing out like my income and where I'm spending my money, I can go and look and say, whoa, that was a stupid purchase. Why did I do that? Like for the business or, whatever. So that one helps me kind of be more mindful of how I spend my money, because one of my fears making this transition was, am I going to spend my money like an idiot when I make it? Like when you work for someone else, you get your paycheck and they can kind of control when you get your money, and then which means when you can spend your money. Like I did really, really well in April. Like
I saw that. Congrats, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. So and if you notice, that was a huge jump from the month before. And May is going to be a dip. Like you'll see a dip in May come back down. And I feel like it's going to be like that a little bit for the next few months.
It's for me as well. It's going up and down. So
yeah. So like for me, like revenue, I think the revenue last month was like $16,000, and the month before that, I think it was only like 3 or 4, right? So like that's a huge jump. But like for me, one of my fears was if that were to happen, I would just go spend that money like an idiot, and like not manage the money. So this report definitely helps me be more mindful of that. But the bigger part of it is actually not the income. It's I list out what goals I had for the month, and if I met them, and other things that came up during the month. And then I gauge my happiness. Because one thing I've noticed, and I'm sure every entrepreneur does, is like, it's an emotional roller coaster. Like there are some days I wake up and I'm like, I just feel completely defeated and I feel lost. And I'm like, what am I doing? And then there's days where I'm like, boom, I'm so confident and I know exactly what to be working on. And that's just the nature of what we're doing. Like there is no guaranteed path, right? And if you're following a step-by-step system, to some degree that's going to help you, but like those step-by-step systems should be like productivity systems or like habitual systems that keep you going versus like, I need to do this first, then that, then this, because quite frankly, I think a lot of the learnings come from just trying to figure it out. And the way that Pat figured it out is not necessarily going to be the way that I'm going to figure it out, or you're going to figure it out, or anyone listening is going to figure it out. Like
experimentation, right? That's what entrepreneurship is about. So yeah.
Yeah. So I like capturing that in I call it the monthly lifestyle and business review. And I'm reviewing my happiness, my health, did I meet my goals? And my goals are not always just business goals, because the 24 hours we have in a day, you need to apply that to your business, and you need to apply that to all the other things.
The
outside.
lifestyle, you know, and the
Exactly.
relationships, and yeah, it's important.
That's why I love the name of your show. Is like a lot of what I'm doing is like, you know, I'm building a business. I'm trying to build a business around my lifestyle, not a lifestyle around my business.
Exactly.
And
very important point.
Yeah, and doing these reports for me personally helps, but I think from like a content perspective, it shows people the growth. Like you can still go back to Pat Flynn's first income report and see that, granted, yes, it was $7,000, but he didn't start doing it right away. Like if he had started doing it right away, like, and John says this too. He's like, if I had started doing mine right away, like the first 3 months, he's like, you would have seen months where I spent $24,000 and made nothing, you know, like, and the same way, like you'll see months like probably coming up where I will have a loss.
Yeah. That happens, right? But some month you have a big bump, like you had in the last month here. I mean, that was a big jump for you.
Yeah, huge. And for me, so like outside of saving that money and using it wisely, for me personally, and in my review, there's a note at the bottom. In October of last year, I sold my house to like to create a safety net for myself in case I had bad months. Yeah. And I paid off all of my debt. So I'm debt free, which is very important. And I have this lump sum of money left that if I need to go grab it, I have some. So that comes down to managing risk. So if anyone's listening and they want to leave their job, you need to, there's going to be risk no matter what you do. Whether you stay in your job or whether you leave your job, there's always going to be risk. So you have to manage it to the best of your ability. For me, that was knowing that I would have enough money in savings to go at least a year without making a single dollar. Thankfully, I haven't had to tap into this safety net too much outside of using it to pay off all of my debt, which I had, you know, like $25,000 in debt to pay off. So I still have a smaller chunk left, but you know, like if say in June, I don't make a single dollar, not only do I have money from the month of April, but I also have money from that savings. So like that for me creates a sense of calmness. Like I still have urgency, but I'm not fighting for things out of fear of not being able to pay for something, which makes me be able to think about what I want to work on a lot easier, makes saying no a whole hell of a lot easier. I had a really great opportunity presented to me to go around the country training people, large organizations on mobile, and in 4 hours they'd pay me $2,000 to speak. And I'd probably be able to reuse that presentation a lot. But that meant traveling once a month, which would be like 2 or 3 days at a time, doing something that didn't really excite me at all. So like I almost said yes to that only because of the money. And I told myself, listen, like I have this money in savings. Don't say yes just because of the money. Like when I pictured myself flying, putting on a suit to like present to this organization that I knew probably wouldn't use any of what I taught them, that just didn't seem fulfilling to me. So I said no. And saying no to that was when I was like, I am in control. Like I'm not going to say yes just because of money. And that safety net behind me from selling my house is one of those things that has helped me be able to say that. I know not everyone can go and sell their house, but you know, can you sell certain things? Can you change your lifestyle? Can you re-architect your life so that you minimize your expenses? I did that same thing too. Like I sold my house. I'm in a very small apartment right now. Like that's the kitchen. Like you can see the kitchen. I'm moving into another house right now with my fiance, and my rent is going to go down by like $600.
Wow.
So like I'm managing my risk. I'm lowering my expenses. So it's like I made a lot of sacrifices. I don't hang out with all my friends all the time. I work a lot. So I think like, and now I'm just rambling, but you'll probably say this too. I'll end with this part and part of the reason I started leaving corporate, I wanted to get to the point of where I really understood what sacrifices people really made to be where they're at. And, you know, like Jason Van Orden from Internet Business Mastery, he cashed out his 401k with his wife. And after that, he was going to have nothing, like nothing, you know? So like people that are willing to go to that extreme to make things happen are the ones that succeed, right? So like I always kind of assess, like when I start working with people, it's like, how can you minimize your, like if their key focus is making money, I'm like, how can you lower your expenses? And are there any sort of sacrifices you might be able to make, selling your house, selling your car, selling something that's really a lot of money to limit, you know, a habit maybe that you partake in that costs you a lot of money, knowing that you're only going to be doing it temporarily. Like I know that I'm going to have another house someday, right? So it's not that important. But I think those sacrifices are really interesting because they don't always necessarily get shared.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And especially with the lifestyle business review, it must help you a lot. And I might actually incorporate something like that on my site. It's a great idea. When I read yours, it's like goals and all this. It resonated with me. And before we end here, you have like 2 podcasts, Mobile Mixed and Leaving Corporate. You have a blog. Now you're working on your products. You have clients. You have speaking gigs. How do you manage this and create so much high quality content? I mean, you just have we have 24 hours in a day. So how do you do that?
I work a lot. But I'm always dabbling with how I work. And I just recently adopted a new system that you should link to in the show notes. I'll send you the link. It's that guy, Brian Harris, I was talking about. It's called a zero-based calendar system where every single hour of the day is accounted for something. So like I wake up and I actually adopted his morning routine because it was very similar to mine already. But like from 7:30 to 8 a.m., I'm going over my checklist for the day. Like when do I have things, kind of putting together my to-do list. And from 8 to noon is just a block called the creative block. And then based on what I need to get done within that block, I create little blocks of what's happening in that creative block. So like, for example, like today after this, I'm putting together slides for a new lesson in my membership site. And that's for an hour. And then the next hour I'm writing content for greghickman.me. Then I have like a half an hour lunch break. Then I'm going to stretch because I'm dealing with a back issue that I'm doing physical therapy for. So I have 15 minutes of stretching. Like every little piece of time up and basically until I'm going to sleep is accounted for. At 7 p.m. I have dinner reservations with my fiance, and from 7 to basically midnight is me and her time. Like I'm not working, but it's on the calendar. So for me, Ramit Sethi said this once too. It's like, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. So I'm very big on using my calendar and assigning specific blocks of time to work on specific tasks. And like yesterday, I had 2 things that came up that totally derailed my entire day. But it happens. And I got really frustrated, and I like literally sort of yesterday, I was like, I'm just done working today. And I walked away because I was like that frustrated. And that will happen. So like, it's not like a guaranteed bulletproof system, but that's how I've been productive lately, is bucketing specific tasks.
I think it helps a lot, and especially with the morning routine is important. I think you're also kind of an early riser, you know.
I try to be. I'm good and bad. My fiance is in the medical field, so she starts a new job later this month, later in June, and she'll be waking up at like 5:30. So I'm gonna start getting on her.
Good for you. You're right.
Yeah, which will be good for me.
Yeah, definitely, man. This is extremely helpful, and like getting all the shit done we have to do as entrepreneurs is sometimes a struggle to but schedule it in. That's a big takeaway. So, man, you've shared a lot of good stuff here. So, where can people find you? Where do you want?
Yeah, I would say, if you're interested in mobile, go to mobilemixed.com. That's MIXED. And if you're interested on my journey and everything else and leaving corporate, just go to greghickman.me.
Definitely. And I link up everything we talked about today over at navid.me/28. So thanks so much, Greg, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and all the amazing information here.
Navid, thank you. Really my pleasure, and best of luck. Continued success. You're killing it. So keep going.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Lifestyle Architects Show.
For more information and to learn more about Navid's journey and how to start your own,
Please visit navid.me.